This is an evaluation of a company that did a post frame building for us, basically a pole barn, in the fall of 2013. And this is their company website, Pacemaker Post Frame Buildings. Post frame buildings are as different to houses as kind of like insects are to animals, sort of. Post frame buildings are usually wide span buildings, even though they can have a lot of partitioned walls inside. They're usually a large area of building. And they differ from a house, which is commonly called balloon frame construction, because the inside is softer in terms of how it's structured and the ease of doing certain things internally to a normal house, building walls, partitions, windows, doors. Post frame buildings are basically regimented from the outside. The shell and the post go into the ground. So they're kind of like hardish and more of their outside design like an insect, and their legs go down into the ground. Oftentimes that's firmed up with a concrete floor. Houses are more like they are set on top of a foundation. They don't go into the ground. Their floors aren't concrete, they're wood. You won't find a wood floor in a post frame building. And like I said, the internal structure is more flexible and soft. It moves around. Building types can have internal walls. That's my point. The difference is that on a balloon frame it has easily partitioned internal walls. You can do the same thing with pole frame structure, post frame structure, but when you go to the outside walls, it's a little bit different to like put in windows and to work with the outer walls. Oftentimes, if there's a lot of things that involve an outer wall in your construction or in your planning, if you're going to be making a lot of modifications to that, it's easier to do it in a balloon frame structure in order to like make a business. If you're going to be doing, like I began this discussion with a large area, and you're going to be using, like a shop or a big wide area, we're going to be doing large storage, and you're not concerned about partitioning the internal area off, then a post frame building is usually the way to go for your needs. We were using this for agriculture, maybe future business involving animals. So a post frame building was something that we needed along with the concrete floor. One important difference that I have seen in traveling around the country and having businesses made in different kind of like strip mall format buildings, which are kind of like a post frame building, is when you change businesses and you're going in and you're redoing the inside of the walls. If you have a bunch of partitioned walls set up, you can literally go in with a bobcat, scrape them all out, and start all over. A balloon frame, it's not that way, because the balloon part of the balloon frame part of the partitioning you're building is oftentimes load bearing, so that flexibility is not there either. So, and I've seen these kind of buildings, these post frame buildings, used for churches, all kinds of commercial applications, mixed commercial applications. Like we have a couple examples around here. CSA is its community support agriculture, where they actually have the business and the equipment storage and a lot of their uses for business and growing things in the back part of a building. The front part of the building is either an office or even a house. I've seen them actually live out of one part of the building, which is it can be a very nice arrangement. This is a basic list of the features we had for the building. It was a 30 by 40 by 10-foot ceiling, and that size, the reason we chose it, and we had a specific reason why we chose that size. We wanted it as large as we could get. And anytime you build a building like this, people always tell me that you need to build as big as you can. And for the building we built, everybody said we needed a bigger building, but we did quite a bit of planning on our utilization of space and how we plan to use the building in the future. I would encourage you to try to plan that. As far as what was the minimum size? 30 by 40, I'll explain later, was the size that we came up with based on some analysis that I did. The poles that they use are ply laminated, and it's pressure treated, obviously. Basically, I think it's 2 by 8. They're basically laminated together, and they rarely use solid poles anymore. And I never was really for using solid poles, because I've seen them warp and twist and just crook, and just every wood warping anomaly you could think that would happen to a solid pole, which is not as likely with a ply laminate, where they basically take like a 2 by 8 board and they basically laminate 3 together. The normal span between poles in a building like this is usually 8 feet. Now, we were having an internal ceiling put in and insulated, so usually in those situations you end up with a 6-foot spread. We had overhangs, which basically for us, we're putting it near our house. We wanted to have the same kind of structure, and that really helps, believe it or not. If you have one that doesn't have the soffits, and you have a house, obviously it has soffits. It makes a big difference on the look between the two, just the eye line. And we have two steel doors. What we have in our arrangement, we have, if you can imagine, two rectangles side by side. One of them is a garden now, and in the future we want to swap between another rectangle right beside it, so back and forth, alternating years or every other year, have the garden swap back and forth. This building sits right in the middle of the two rectangles. We have animals we'll keep in the garden when it's not being used as a garden, and swap them back and forth on alternate years. So that's the basic idea. For each side, we would have a garage door access on each side into the rectangle, and also a small service door which goes into that rectangle as well, and a gate between the two rectangles. So we have kind of complete equipment access, and also access, when you're on that side of the rectangle, with a garage door and a service door to get equipment in and out. The doors are insulated. We're going to have an insulated ceiling. We've got a 4-inch concrete floor, and what are the things? I did the electrical. They were happy to let me do the electrical. They said I could contract it out. They also do electrical. And let's see, like I said, we had R38 in the ceiling and insulation in the walls. And we also had guttering put on, which really helps. And also, along that line where the water comes off, you don't get basically an erosion problem with a drip erosion ditch being made there all the time. Plus, we could use the runoff for rain barrels for the gardens on both sides. So this is a time-lapse feed from our security system of the view outside the house toward that area. What they're doing here is they're putting dry concrete mix in the hole along with the pole, and over time the ground moisture will set up that concrete. I wish I had realized this years ago. I'd have done some of the stuff that I've done in the past the same way. So the reason they're setting these poles, and they definitely have a distance and a pattern, for the dimensions of what they're doing. But these poles are kind of soft set. They're in the hole, and the hole, the pole might be plus and minus an inch or so off of where it needs to be. You can see them lining it up. The flexibility they have here, and which aids in their speed of construction, is that they can set these really quickly with the relative dimensions of the building, and then as they're framing it up, because they're soft set, they can move these around slightly as they're building it to square it up and make sure it's, first of all, orthogonal, and also straight up and down. So obviously these 2 points are very nice to have. The foreman here for the setting crew, I think his name was Charlie, he pointed out something early on. He read the contract and saw how we were laying it out and understood what we were doing. He said, hey, this door you're going to have to the middle, because we didn't have it mirrored, the doors and the garage doors and the service doors on both sides. He goes, are you sure you don't want to mirror that? Because if you have a fence at the exact center splitting the building in two sides for your rectangle, he says, this door's going to open against the fence. Is that really the way you want it? He says, if you want me to, I can change it right now. It's not a problem. So he moved those around. It wasn't a problem. That was one example of the foreman looking at the contract, understanding what it was we thought we wanted, and saying, listen, the way I see you have the fence right here right now, maybe you ought to move it. I can do it for you. So that was really nice. Appreciate that. So one of the things that's easy to notice when you watch these men working is how their workflow and how they've got their material range really helps in their efficiency, and that's the one thing you need to have to keep your costs low. Unfortunately, in the middle of this, we had downpours of rain, which really made it interesting. Here you can see the framing crew coming in, and this is the part where they're actually going in and squaring up these poles that were soft set, and making sure that the walls, and basically you got a rectangular building and it's straight up and down. It's pretty much straight as fundamental as that. And you can see they do the cross bracing to do that, and here they're setting the joist, which is, they've got the material set up so they can really move fast. And I've set a lot of joists in my time, and they're doing a really good job. They're obviously going to lay these strips up so they can do their metal roof, which I've never done a metal roof. I've always done shingles, because when I used to do this back in the 70s, in the early 80s, metal roofs weren't around. Aluminum ones were. And you can see as their work progresses, there's one guy there, I think his name's Charlie, and he's a foreman, and you can see him walking around and checking things. So that's one of the things that really helps, I think, their speed and efficiencies. They don't have having to redo stuff, and they've obviously been doing this a long time, but he's constantly going around and checking and cross-checking things. You'll see him running around doing tapes, measurements, while his other crew is going on, progressing with the work. So here they are, they put the roof in, and see my dog's there in the video a little bit. They're supervising, make sure everything's going okay. They're putting the side paneling on the doors. I didn't catch all the video. The security system was down, but here you see them putting on the side panels and putting the trim up. And they just had one little piece of trim that got cut wrong, and they didn't have it for over the door, so they had to come back and put that on later. So, and here we are with the concrete crew. And concrete crew comes in and they come inside and smooth everything out, finish the grade inside, and they start pouring concrete. And it was raining a little bit that day. It had been raining a little bit the day before, and it was cold. For concrete, those are not good combinations of elements. But Bender Concrete was the contractor they used, and they did a really good job. They could have, said it's too cold, too wet, we won't do it. But they they had to sometimes take the Bobcat and actually ferry. Use the bucket to bring unload the trucks at a distance a little bit to get the truck lightened up so it could make it across the field. So they really had a challenge ahead of them for doing all this work. And you can't see what really is going on inside, but they're finishing this little skirt outside, and they did a really good job. And the guy who did their screeding, I've screeded tons of concrete. He was there for 4 or 5 hours. Did an excellent job at screeding the concrete. This is a chart that I said earlier. We're trying to decide what size of building we wanted to have. The poor guy, the salesman, we did this, made a decision over a period of 2 years, and my wife had a change in position, and we're trying to figure out what we're going to be doing. And he had done probably about 8 to 10 estimates. Well, there was enough variation in the square footage and the features and everything we wanted for me to do what it's traditionally called in corporate finance a marginal cost curve, to make a decision on minimizing your optimizing your decisions, minimizing your costs. This curve basically is the cost ratio of how much money you're putting in and how much utility you're getting out. And obviously, for a curve like this, if I didn't even explain it to you, 1 is a good number, and anything less than 1 is better. For the estimates that we got from them for a feature-rich building, this isn't a bare bones building; it's a feature-rich building, and is for our particular case. But the one thing that I want to say about this curve is it is the shape of a traditional curve for cost margin, which, if you know what that means, it indicates that their costs and their efficiencies are fairly aligned. And they lived through the period of 2008 to 2014, and if this curve didn't have a fairly normal shape for what you'd expect as marginal cost, they'd have been out of business a long time ago. What this chart tells you is that at a cost ratio of 1 to 1, for every dollar you put in, you get $1 out. That's at about 1,000 square feet for what we wanted in our building. It may not be the same for every building that they make. For our particular case, it was 1,000 feet, and what this says is that for 1,100 feet, 1,200 feet, 1,300 feet, once we go past that and start heading that way, our bang for our buck, or the amount of utility and building we get for every dollar we spend, the cost to return ratio goes down and down and down. And this is what makes a lot of municipality projects, water projects, road projects, malls, huge development projects possible, is this cost to return ratio. And it was kind of a little bit ridiculous to do it on a building this size, but I had the numbers, and I wanted to make sure what was the smallest size building that we could do, and then feel good about adding, when we added more money, got more money from a loan, that we're actually putting that money to good use. Everybody said we needed a huge building. I said we don't need a mammoth building. We need to plan it right, and plan our costs, and plan our usage, and figure out what the smallest building was we could have, and then work from there. And that's pretty much what this curve does. This is the Pacemaker evaluation forms as they send out to their customers after construction is complete. So fill this out, this evaluation. Also send it in. Where'd you hear about Pacemaker? Well, there's a CSA up the road. It's Community Support Agriculture. They basically have a building that they built. Part of it is their business. Part of it, they actually live out of it. So kind of some versatility in how that was constructed. I was impressed by that. Also, a friend of mine is in the very large-scale business of building industrial buildings for manufacturing, like 10,000, 30,000 square feet. Pacemaker does do some of those up that end. I'm not quite sure where their economy scale and how their cost margins pan out for that market. My friend does huge buildings all over, like 3-state areas. So I called him and said, yeah, he was busy. This is a little bit smaller for the kind of equipment he uses. That he has in this area, but he did recommend Pacemaker. So as far as one of the main reasons, I looked into the materials they use, their construction techniques, talked to the people involved. That pretty much was one of the things that really impressed me. The office staff, I've had to find out information, didn't know who to call, didn't know whether if I talked to some of that information would get left hanging. The office staff was very courteous, figured out obviously who I need to talk to, made their best efforts to get me connected to that person, and also would follow back up to find out if I actually made contact and got the information I needed. I gave them a 5 on that, and the construction crews were very professional. I've worked with crews all over the country. I've worked for Exxon in the oil industry, building gasoline stations, things of that nature. I've been a project manager. Crews are always an interesting sort. Getting them to work together it takes a little bit of talent. Pacemaker crews in general, the pacemaker crews that were actually pacemaker and not external contractors, they work together. Very professional. Their quality of work, their supervisors made sure, not at the end of the day, but as the process went on, you can see, checking, and they've obviously done this a lot, so there's a rolling method and process they use to, make sure that they get everything right. Attitude, they talk to each other, joke around during the day, didn't see any contentious behavior, didn't see any, bad attitude kind of stuff going on, which is, bad weather when this thing was built. It's cold, rainy mess. Tend to see a little bit going on crews, just, way of life, didn't see any of that thing going on. Job site appearance, they always kept, and you see in the video, they always kept everything neat. They're not at the end of the day kind of clean up, but as they were going on, when they got finished one phase, the other, they cleaned up, so that was really a good sign. On the other hand, I usually wait till the end of the day and then clean up, but you can't do that when you have a lot of people running around. Communication, as far as, like I said, the foremans and the crews seem to get together really well. Different crews seem to be able to communicate to each other very, very well, pass information back and forth. Channel might be informal, but it works really well. And as far as, communication with what the contract says and what they're doing at any point in time, I would ask them questions. In fact, I may have pointed out earlier in the video that, the guy who, after the poles was set, he came in and said, okay, now where do you want these doors? And he pointed out, well, if you really want this door in the middle, does it really make sense because you're going to be opening up against a fence? He says, right now, with the way things are, I can move that to the outside, not a problem. So, the overall looking around, see what you're doing, and actually have an opinion about how what changes they can make during the process and how it might help you. That was something also that I was very impressed with. So the overall comments for them. The sales representative, obviously a lot of experience, knows a lot about the industry, the local people, didn't run anybody down, did emphasize how their materials and how their process is a little bit different to give them an advantage. Definitely brought a lot to the job. Knowledge, obviously very knowledgeable about his product, and what we wanted to do and how it was going to work out for us in the long term, because obviously they put a lot of product in over time, and how did this actually work out for you? That brings that into the process. Attitude, very driven, obviously been doing this a long time. He worked with us for 2 years. We had him do many estimates because we didn't know what we were wanting, and we kept moving the building around different places. It just really would stress somebody out. He was very patient. Timeliness, never had a problem with timeliness. Coordination and scheduling, always right on top of that. Level of service, I'd actually give that a 5 too. And the thing of it is, like I said, I used to work for corporate customers doing construction and overseeing things. I was actually an electronics engineer, but I had to do project management using a computer with projects that had thousands of line items in them. Some of these guys do all that in their head. Basically, I'm pretty picky. People I used to work for were even worse. I don't know if I'd want to build something for me or not, to be honest with that. I'm giving them all 5s. That's why I mentioned that. If I had to say, it's probably between 4 and 5 on all these, but it's rounding up to 5 for a lot of these options. Usually when you see, people put 5s on everything, it's ringer. I grew up in industry. They pretty much got their act down, so it's pretty easy to give them above a 4 and 5 easily. So that comment for that. Like I said, the salesperson was very patient. We on and off, and then my wife had a change in her job, so I had to put it off another year, and we had to pick it back up again, go back to what last quote he did. So yeah, it's good patience there. Overall experience, I have give them a 5, between a 4 and a 5, closer to 5. I've seen projects, like I said, I grew up in this business when I was a teenager, building houses, worked in the industry, and contracting subcontractors, and I've seen building projects done poorly. Bad concrete, bad design, just bad workmanship, things that you really can't do. And I didn't really see any of that here. I made several inquiries, obviously, before choosing them. They coordinate your subcontractors, which is basically the lifeblood of this kind of a business. You have to have good subcontractors. You have to have good rapport and coordinating them. And there was a good man named Carl Schrock. He did all this in his head. Like I said, I used to do it with computer, and I used his computer because I didn't like it. He did it because I think he actually enjoys it, shuffling these people around and getting them where they need to go, and making things fit. I think it's one of the things he likes to do. He made it all fit, and that was kind of impressive. I think if they actually need a motto to be in the middleman for all this and try to get customers to be happy on one side and subcontractors to be the same way, they have to make money too. It's a pacemaker building first, and then when we're happy with it, we'll give it to the customer. And I think that ought to be one of their mottos. In fact, so I wrote that down. Additional comments. Let's see. The only probably thing that they need to add is a change order provision to their contracts. We had a change order late in the process, which is exactly where you don't want one. We had misinterpreted some specs. We thought that the internal finish of the building was one way, and we found out that it wasn't that way. We had to get it changed. Some of the material was already on site. So, it's not that the change order, provisions in the contract would change what I'm just describing. It's just it more confines it and says, if there are a change order, expect a delay, expect costs, like 10% restocking on material, stuff like that. We didn't actually have any of those problems. I'm just saying that that's what I usually see in a change order provision for houses, any kind of thing that you normally build. They don't have that in their contracts, mainly because I think they're, in this case, we had a feature-rich building, a lot of features, and it was inevitable we were going to find some things we need to change. I think in general, a good change order provision in their contracts will probably serve the customers and them very well. So anyway, that's pretty much that valuation form filled out.
This is a walk around for the building, and I'm on the north side. The way they do their poles, they put them in, they put as in the video, they put a concrete base, basically set the pole in the base, and then that hardens over time, and then the dirt around the hole fills in. So over time you have to fill up around the hole, which is pretty much expected for this kind of construction. The trim work on this is excellent. Didn't have any complaints on that, and I had been up and around that area a lot doing the wiring. This is coming around to the northwest corner, and we had gutters put in. I believe those look like 4 or 5 inch gutters. They're pretty big gutters, and you can see where I put a electrical outlet in the soffit. The purpose of that is to put another security light in this corner, some kind of infrared. And the downspouts really look nice, very tough. The siding, the way they do the lip rail at the bottom. We've had some pretty nasty storms. That whole system works fairly well. And their siding, the way they do the screws, when I was in the attic doing this ceiling wiring, I didn't see anywhere where they'd actually missed a, and you can see here again, here's where a pole, like I said, at the bottom there's a concrete base, but as the soil sits in, you have to fill around that, and that's just pretty much expected. And like here's another one, I put soffit outlets in the middle, the center, and the outside. And I also ran Cat 5 wired all of them too, in case eventually, there's like internet cameras. I'm gonna have animals out here that I need to keep an eye on, especially when I'm on vacation. So this is the south side, pretty much the same. We had a little bit lower cost because we didn't put windows in. It's a little bit more expensive to put windows in a pole frame building because there's nothing to support it. So you have to go back in and build supports for all those. So the windows are pretty expensive creatures. When you talk about like a window that be in a house, it's probably like $100. To put windows in a pole barn building is a little bit more expensive, like maybe 3-4 times that. Seems like a lot, but they got to build a lot into it. And this is the front. And we have 2 doors put in, and 2 garage doors. And this is this building is in the center of 2 rectangles, and we're going to offset. This is a garden over here. On the other side, that's going to be a garden over there. So from years to years, we're going to swap gardens, and we're also going to keep animals on this side during the off-garden year and then swap them back and forth. So that's why it looks like this, and there'll be a gate in the middle to control what's going on. And then I haven't got my lights up yet. Open this door. And the garage doors work fairly well. I don't think they have a window garage door on, but this garage door here was put in by Culp Doors. They did a really good job. Works really well. Had some nasty weather this winter, and they support those with pretty good with pretty heavy support rail across the ceiling joist. So there, there's no movement at all or rumbling when you raise the door. You can see we've got some storage. This is actually temporary storage. The storage I'm going to put in here is actually at Home Depot. It's a 96-inch, 2 96-inch racks, so it's lengthwise, but it's 96 inches to the ceiling. This is a 96-inch high roof ceiling in here. I'm sorry, and you can these racks will go all the way to the ceiling, and I can put those 18-gallon Rubbermaid tubs, like those kind of tubs there, and just basically put those on that. So floor to ceiling, and it'll come out to about here. So it'll come out to 16 feet all the way back. And you can see I've got more racks and a pretty long wide ceiling. I've got Pacemaker went ahead and let me put the wiring outlets in the ceiling for lights. So they went ahead and let me do that, which is very nice. And whenever the crews were here, I just stayed out of their way, and when they weren't here, I just came in and worked on it. And let's see, this is finished on the inside with OSB. Originally we thought that we were going to have metal, but that was one of the options that we misunderstood. We thought a metal ceiling meant metal walls, but no, you have to actually specify the wall treatments too. So we kind of messed up on that, but that wasn't, we had to swap out insulation. That's what in the description on the evaluation I put, change order situation where, it may actually be in their contract. I haven't seen it in a while, but change order specifications, stuff like that would be something nice to add and for normal housing. And I got I put that in, and had just had the box nailed in there. The Pacemaker people came in and just framed it in for me. They had to do that to put the OSB, but it was really nice of them to frame that up. So that's kind of the inside, and once again the screw work for putting in a ceiling. Like I said, I'd run all over up there, and they blew I think it's R38 ceiling, and that's a nice even blown ceiling. So the people who did the installation blew that really well, and I don't think they missed a screw here. I mean, all the screws hit all the studs upstairs. So that's kind of one thing I kind of worry about. When this kind of a building, it's not like a house, it's not like finished drywall, so there's little bitty things, but when they put in the OSB, all of the seams are tight, and I specified to make the bottom piece, the piece to be on the bottom, and since it's a 9-foot ceiling, it's an 8-foot sheet of plywood to put the piece on the bottom. But in general, we're very happy with it. And the one thing that we put on here that really helped us, how you're gonna get equipment in and out of here, is the skirt. So we have a concrete skirt along the front. So basically it allows us to have some area to work in and out of the doors in the front here. Eventually I'll ramp up to that with some kind of a dirt ramp, but I didn't want that right at the garage door, so I wanted it back, and they were able to work with me on that. So overall, we're very happy with our Pacemaker building.